Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, do you ever get those paper scraps? And if you are like me, I store some of these at the front of my paper pads, but it kind of gets to the point where you need to use up some of the last pieces. I don't want to say the ones that you least like, but usually sometimes there are pieces that end up in the paper pads that you just need to use up, and that is going to be one of our reasons we are working today. So I have a few of these pieces that are just smaller, and honestly, I think these are absolutely fine, but I think I'm getting over them falling out of their little spaces, and so that is what inspired me to use these today. Now, I'm actually also getting inspired by a previous video that I have made. Again, the focus being using up bits and pieces and scraps. Now, this is Blossom Serenity, that paper pad on the right, and I absolutely love that one. It's actually, it's not new. It's not a new release at all, but I've had it for a while, but it's still got some good papers in it I can use. And then the other Simple Vintage one, again, beautiful. But we just need to make sure that we use up all of those paper pads that I go ahead and purchase. So as I said, I was inspired by a video that I have already created and absolutely loved, and that is the Wonky houses. And that is why this is going to work so well for today, because we're using up these scraps and bits and pieces and a couple of different paper pads that we might even pop together. So these are some of the Wonky houses that I have made. I also made some buttons along the same lines as these. I used to do Wonky houses way back when I was art journaling, and then I used it in mixed media as well. The main ingredient that you are going to need is some glue, some scissors, and some papers. Now, I am keeping these fairly random, as you saw, and I will say, these probably don't end up as wonky maybe as I wanted them to, but who's to say that that's not okay too? So there was no end game here. I knew I just wanted to make some presents, and I was inspired by the wonky ones. I still think I could make wonkier ones, if that makes sense. But nonetheless, I'm going to cut some of these. They're not going to have straight edges. They're all cut by scissors, so they're not perfect. They're going to be different shapes. And I just cut some rectangle squares. I actually ended up doing a whole lot of these just because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet. I just wanted to be creative, but didn't really have an end situation in mind. So we're just going ahead and cutting some rectangles, cutting some squares, trying to not make sure if they're too even, if they're, wider or skinnier towards one end or the other, and that's okay. And again, as I said, not as wonky as what, they could be, but this is also just about enjoying it, and I was enjoying it, and that's what the bottom line is. Then I was thinking about some lids for these little gift boxes, and again, I'm going to do not super straight lines. I am using my long bladed scissors. These are the recoil scissors from Tim Holtz, and these help me get straighter lines when I'm cutting longer lines. And so these are handy if you have a pair of long bladed scissors. I find that helps. But nonetheless, I am just trying to mix and match and I think I've got about 5 or 6 patterns that I'm working with here, and I just go ahead and start with this. As I said, I'm just enjoying the process as well. So then I glue on all of their little lids to the boxes, to the gifts. These are going to be presents or gifts, and it's going to be, well, I guess just because I was doing gifts, it was aiming to be a birthday card, but there's always options. You could make these Christmassy as well if you had Christmas paper pads and things that you wanted to use up, or that you had made yourself, some backgrounds and things. Then you could take this exact same idea and turn it into Christmassy. These are the Pretty Bows 2, actually, from Simon Says Stamp. I believe there is a one. I love this second set, and these are pretty versatile. I'm going to pick a couple of these. I've already got some videos using these on my channel, but as I said, I really like to have items in my stash that I can definitely make the most of and use in so many different ways. So the last time, in fact, the last card I made with these, it was just a card purely focused around bows. There was no gifts involved. So this time I'm going with gifts, and I just chose a couple of bows and then die cut out a whole lot with them. Then I have found some twine, some thread, some, and just, this is what I had. So I had like some kind of burlap twine, I guess, with a gold fleck through it, a gold twine thread through it, and then I have actual gold thread, and then I have some black and white twine, and then just plain black twine. These are all from different companies, various bits and pieces, and in fact the the burlap twine with the thread is from Kmart, and it was on clearance here in New Zealand, so I think that cost me maybe $2, I think, or $1.97 or something along those lines, and so super cheap and cheerful, and it's going to last me forever. I was thinking about the black and white, but I think I'm just going to go plain black. There is quite a few colours going on already. The twine, the burlap twine, which I love and I usually lean into, that kind of sunk into the background again a little too much. So although I don't think black was a perfect choice, this channel is about using what we've got, and those were the things that I had. So use what you've got. Even some wool or some raffia or something like that would look stunning. So try different options. Depends on which paper pads you've used, and all those good things. And this is just what I had. We are all about using what we have. I'm going to put the little tiny bits of phone tape on the back of some of the bows and pop them on the gifts. Then again, I'm just trying to choose a different color than what we've already got as for the bows. That's how I simply make the choice. And as I said, at this point, I decided to limit it and work with those 5 or 6 patterns that I already had, just because I felt like that was enough to mix and match for my brain for the moment. So we're just going ahead and making gifts. Now, not all of these needed to have the twine on them. I could have done some without. I could have done some with the gold thread as well. But again, we are just keeping it simple and moving ahead with less ideas. And that's just how my brain works. And you might like to get super creative all at one time. But I sort of had a plan, like I was forming a plan as I was going, thinking about, oh, what could go underneath here, or oh, how would this work? And so it changed from sort of creating and just making lots of these little wonky gifts, as I want to call them, into more, oh, I think I've got an idea. I think I've got a card idea. I think I know how I want these to be. And so it changed, and that's okay, because I started with no ideas and I ended up with one. So that's a good day. I have the Happy from Trinity stamps. Now, I also actually have the birthday. This is the birthday one I got, I don't know, more than a year ago, and I have used this to death, but the Happy was a recent purchase because I loved the birthday so much. So it felt like a very worthwhile purchase for me. Although I am going to be using some of the much smaller words in these ones, and that's okay. But do you know what? I left this bit in here because I thought that you would get a giggle. Do you think I could stamp out the perfect wishes? The problem is sometimes I have some little helpers who help re-ink my stamps and my ink pad, and they are very good at that. And depending on which one and sometimes the age of those beautiful helpers, you know, we get varying amounts of ink and we get varying amounts of refreshed ink pads. And so this one was juicy, and I couldn't quite bring myself to put some of the excess ink down onto scrap paper and sort of make it very usable. So I was fighting that, but it was a me problem. I made it work, and I absolutely got that sorted. So there we go. Then I used the birthday from Trinity, the die set, and I have cut it out of that brown gingham sort of paper. So I did the die cutting out of the same paper, and then we're wanting to go for a very sort of neutral background. So I'm actually going to keep this completely white. But again, this is a new embossing folder to me. This is the Spiral, I think it's called Spiral something from Simon Says Stamp. Just so versatile. I mean, this feels like one of those backgrounds that truly could be any occasion. It's not specific at all. And don't get me wrong, I love a good occasion orientated item, whether that be an embossing folder or something else, but I do love a good generic all-rounder handy for all events kind of embossing folder, and that one definitely matches it. It's very, very cool. And then at this point, my white card base just wasn't quite doing it. It just felt a little too blank because I already have the plain white background from the embossed piece of white cardstock. So I'm going to use the same brown and do a little colouring around the edges. It looks like a bit of a hot mess, but it's all going to come together. You can see how this is going to look. I've got my nice embossed piece here with so much beautiful texture. So any embossing folder that you have that is just sort of generic, it creates texture. It creates something going on that's just a little more than nothing. So this one is perfect, but anything like this, any generic pattern is going to work. Then I will have the little birthday up the top. Just trying the layout, making sure that I have enough room for everything here. The card base itself is going to be 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and then I have cut the spiral, the embossed piece down to be about 4 by 5 1/4, and that is because these gifts or presents that I made are quite big. Actually, when you pop multiples on a card, and so I didn't have too much room to trim down too much. I decided that the bow sunk in a bit too much to the background here, so I'm going to change it up to a different bow, and then at least we can see it because it was brown on brown from the gift behind it. So we solved that problem by just die cutting another bow and popping it right on top. And then I'm going to put some of these flat, some with a little bit of dimension. You could use some 1mm foam tape, that would help. And then you can always double it up if you want really good dimension. If you're not sure about placement, then pop some liquid glue on the back of your foam tape, and that will help you be able to move it around, but it will still give you the great dimension that you are after. And once I've got sort of the placement of all of these gifts, I can add in sending you and the wishes. So those smaller little sub-sentiments there that build that top on there. And this was just a really fun card to make. I didn't really start out with a plan to make a card. I was happy to make some little wonky gifts and play around with some of the scraps and colors and patterns and mixing and matching all of those, which I might not have otherwise put together. And so that was really fun. And again, as I said, inspired by those wonky houses, so that was great. I popped some little enamel dots in the center of the bows because I felt like it just needed that. And then I have the inside here, and of course I still have more gifts and things ready to go. Sorry about the camera struggling to focus, but I decided for this one I didn't want bulk in the center. So I'm actually just going to draw this one on instead of adding the actual string, but it's always nice to add in a little element if you would, if you have it spare or you have the space and it's not too bulky. So I will pop this one on the inside, and that sort of carries on that theme onto the inside of the card as well. Deciding whether I wanted it to go on the left or the right hand side of that inside piece there, but it doesn't really matter. It's just that extra little piece, and sometimes I stamp things on the inside and sometimes I don't, depending on usually what sentiments I have that might work in the center. But today it's just a beautiful little gift, and I was happy with that. So I appreciate you being here. Let me know if you have tried the wonky houses, or if you have tried or will try these wonky gifts. If you do, then I'd love to see your results, and you can post them on my Facebook group, which is called Come Crafting with Natasha. It's a beautiful, supportive community, and we would love to see your photos and creations. So come and join us there. But other than that, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.